Right, 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to the first ever episode of Stories of Search with me, Rachel Weinhold.
And me, Erin.
Oh, Erin, I'm so excited!
It is going to be so good.
So just for context, we've tried to record a podcast several times and this is hopefully the time that we get it right.
Yeah.
So today we are here to talk about, well, to answer the question, can you turn the internet off? And inherent in that is some facts and figures about the size of the internet, which is always a lot bigger than people think it is. But before we get into it, Erin Dempsey, how's your week been?
My week's been okay. I'm very jet lagged. I just got back from a big trip to Canada, which was incredible. But my week's been okay. TGIF for tomorrow. How's your week been, Rachel?
It's been alright. I'm feeling quite smug this week, and I probably shouldn't say this because everybody I know is poorly.
That's going to come and bite
This
me
is
on the
going to come and bite me on the arse, yeah. But thus far, touch wood, I think I'm alright. So yeah, I'm looking forward to some sunshine. Well, sunshine this weekend.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
They promised. Okay, anyway, enough chit chat, Erin.
Sorry.
That's alright. Let's talk about, can you turn the internet off?
Okay.
So, I've got some facts and figures for you, and I've got some questions for you. But my first question is, do you know how the internet works?
Considering it is my job, I hope I do. Yeah, I think I've got a good idea of how the internet works.
Okay, so this is one of the biggest misconceptions that people have about the internet, the internet, Jen. People think it is an ethereal thing that lives up there in the ether, and it isn't. I mean, bits of it, obviously, are sending information through the ether, but actually the internet is a physical thing. It operates in the world, and it's massive, absolutely massive. What do you think? Do you think people are aware of that, or do you think everyone thinks the internet is just a magical?
I think the majority of people think that it's above us and hovering in a cloud somewhere. I think that there are some clever people out there, you included, that know that it isn't, and it's among us. And but yeah, I think that the misconception is widely recognised that it just being out there somewhere.
But to be fair to people, I can understand why they think that, because we have cloud-based services. We share our photos to the cloud. We have Ethernet cables. You know, everything to do with the internet makes it sound like it exists, above us.
And it's hard to recognise the internet as something that's here and with us, because we're not in touch with it in the same way that me and you are in touch with each other, for example. It's not a thing that you can pinpoint your finger on, is it? So I absolutely understand. And if I think about it too much, I get into all this like existential crisis. Where am I and what am I doing? So I understand.
It is, absolutely. And I think those are some of the subjects that we'll come on to talk about, is how, or the discrepancy between the internet and what happens online and then what we experience in the real world. Because quite often, again, people see that disconnect and they think that things that happen online, or things that they say online, or things that they experience online are not real. And actually, they are real things that impact our real life.
So true.
But anyway, the internet absolutely is a physical thing, and it is housed in servers that are housed in buildings all around the world. And one of the subjects that we're going to come on to talk about in an upcoming episode is kind of the environmental impact of that. So how is the real world impact of having all of these servers running in all these buildings impacting us?
Yeah, great.
But in the meantime, we're here to talk about the size of the internet today. So do you have any idea when the internet first became a thing?
A long, long time ago.
Yeah.
It's probably more recent. I don't know a year. It's probably more recent than I think people might think.
So what year were you born?
I was born in 1999.
And so the internet has always been a thing.
Always been a thing. However, it has massively evolved.
Yeah.
I don't remember like dial-up and things that you guys talk about, but I do remember, like your TV having a big box at the back of it and having a landline and things like that. I know it's not massively the internet, but we didn't have a laptop at home the way that I've got laptops now. So it's massively evolved, which makes me think that it wasn't years and years and years and years before I was born.
Yeah.
But go on, enlighten me.
Well, it was years before I was even born. The first internet was part of an academic research project that was taking place in 1969. So computers generally is obviously a 20th century thing, but quite often, because they really only became ubiquitous in the 90s, where we really, and the tail end of the 90s was when we all started to have a computer in our home. But yeah, the internet and was going for 30, 40 years before that. It was a United States government project initially, and it was what we would call today an intranet.
Right.
So it was just a few computers linked and able to talk to each other, and that was how it started. But the first sort of internet service providers came around in the 80s, and then by the 90s, the internet had become, it had spread outside these government agencies. It was no longer an intranet, it became an internet. And we all
that's
able to access it. Yeah, I think back to when, I think I was in college when I first got access to the internet. And it was fascinating. I mean, if you think back to what it was like then, it was rubbish. And I think we might do a sort of what was the internet like in the olden days episode at some point, because I do find it fascinating.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was revolutionary, and people knew at that time that it would be revolutionary, but we didn't know how much it was going to be revolutionary.
Even just that change of terminology from intra to inter, I never knew that was a thing.
It was the possibility of being connected, because before then, if you wanted to talk to somebody, you had to write them a letter or make a phone call, but that was really expensive and your mum wasn't going to let you. So, I had a pen pal in America, and finding out things about their life.
Did you send owls?
Yeah. it went over on the QE2 over the Atlantic. But no, we suddenly realised that we could communicate with people that weren't near us immediately, and that was a revolutionary idea. So anyway, the global network was available to potentially everybody around the world by the 1990s. Internet connections notwithstanding. Today, 5 billion people across the world have access to the internet, which is about 66% of the world's population, which is 2/3 of people. And those that don't have access to the internet are because they live in very remote places, they can't get, connections. Obviously, Elon Musk with his Skynet or Starnet or whatever it's called, the project is aiming to change that. So the goal is, at the moment, we all have to have Wi-Fi, and we connect to the Wi-Fi and we have to pay for that. In not too many years, the internet will just be something that everybody accesses. Yeah, it'll be, again, as ubiquitous as, we expect to be able to turn on a tap and get water. We will expect to be able to turn on our phones and have internet.
Wow.
And it won't be something that will be gatekept in the same way. Gatekept? No.
Yeah, that statistic's surprising in itself. For us, I know how blessed we are to have it so readily available, but there's such a massive chunk of the world that just don't. And it's crazy, it's like the back in the 60s almost, you know what I mean? It's so far behind. I know we covered that in another episode.
It is, yeah.
But it's crazy, the portion of the world, how did they do it?
The way that we used to do things, and this is what I mean, it really, when you think about it, the 90s was, 25, 30 years ago, not a long time. I was a teenager then. It's, well living memory for me, well is. But now we just expect our lives to be lived. Everything is on my phone. I went travelling across Europe with a tiny backpack because everything was on my phone, everything that I needed. I didn't have to carry everything around with me anymore. And we take it for granted, and all of a sudden, if you haven't got access to Wi-Fi or you haven't got your phone with you or whatever, you're lost. You are locked out of buildings, you can't get access to your money, you can't contact people. Literally everything that we do is now through the internet. And so yes, there are people that are living their lives without that connectivity. They're probably in a much slower, nicer way of life.
I was going to say they're probably happier without the internet.
Essentially. Okay, so another question for you. If you were going to download the entire internet, how long do you think it would take you?
Oh my gosh. Oh, I don't know. I just made a funny sound. I don't know. A long time.
Okay. I think the number will surprise you.
Oh, really?
If you were going to download the entire internet, assuming that you had bandwidth and storage for it and everything, it would take 11 trillion years.
I was going to say the rest of my lifetime, so wow.
Yes, the rest of your lifetime and a lot more.
And the rest.
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
Because it's actually massive. There are some really interesting clips on YouTube that sort of try and put the size of the internet into context. So if you go on YouTube and search for how big is the internet, there are some really good videos on there that try and show you in terms of size of New York City and the moon and all that kind of stuff. So I've got some facts and figures here, which are, some of these are so big that they just become meaningless numbers. But in 2020, people who were using the internet generated 64.2 zettabytes of data. To put that into context, that exceeds the number of detectable stars in the cosmos.
Wow.
Yeah,
you can't get your head around it, can you? That is just wild.
So that's more bytes of data than we have stars in the known cosmos. Yeah, crackers. And bear in mind, there are more stars than there are grains of sand on Earth.
Yeah.
So that's a lot. And that figure is rising. It's not only rising, the internet in recent years has doubled in size every single year. So by the end of this year, the data we're creating will reach 147 zettabytes.
And do you think that will be forever? Do you think is there an end to it, or will it continuously grow?
It can't continuously grow. It's not possible for it to continuously grow. So that's another question that we will come to, of how, what is the environmental impact of this and all that kind of stuff. At the minute, people, by people I mean big corporations, are starting to realise that we cannot just have an endless continuation of growth. Exponential is more than the word at which the internet is growing. And at some point that has to stop, because there is a stop on the environmental impact, there's a stop on storage, we just won't have enough. Eventually the whole world would be covered in servers in order to house all of this. Because again, the internet does not just exist up there. Every single one of those bytes of data has to be stored on a computer, a server somewhere, and that server has to have a physical location. So, geographically we can't just keep making it.
What a day that will be.
Yeah.
When they say stop.
I think we've got a long way to go yet before it will stop, but also the question is, what is the benefit of us just keeping creating all of this endless amounts of data? So just to look at that as well. So no, it's all right, don't worry. So there are currently 1.14 billion websites in the world. How many of those, just in a rough percentage, do you think are active, and how many do you think are inactive?
I think more will be inactive than active.
Yeah.
I'll go 60-40.
Okay, it's 20-80. So 20% of the websites in the world are active.
Right.
80% of the internet is dead. It's inactive. It's stuff that was created years ago and nobody's gone back to it. Or
that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. And so if you think about search engines index every single page and have to put that in a kind of filing cabinet and log it. They cannot keep doing that forever, and so now they are realising, if we think about this size of the internet thing, we can't just keep adding every page that's created. We've got to start taking stuff out, and so that's why they're looking at pages that have been inactive for a long time, or websites that haven't been updated for a long time, and they're saying, right, let's just remove them from the index. Can't keep doing this. But 80% of the internet is dead, and we have got an episode that's upcoming on the dead internet theory, which is a whole other wormhole that we can go down, which we will at some point. The fact that most of the internet is dead and or being run by bots is a whole other conversation that we are aware of, and we will come to it. Couple more facts and figures for you. So there are, talking about that index side, so Google's index, Google being the biggest search engine, they have 400 billion pages indexed.
Wow.
So 400 billion pages, and that's just what they've got in their index. So if we think about, again, how many more there are outside of that. 10,500 new websites are created every single hour. 10,500 new websites, not pages.
Numbers are massive.
Yeah. Bigger than we can really realistically imagine. At some point numbers just become meaningless numbers. But they're huge.
But it solidifies why so many people believe that the internet is beyond us because it's hard for the human brain to compute these kind of numbers
Yeah.
or something that you can't put your finger on.
Yeah,
We can't see X billion amounts of zettabytes and yada yada yada. We can't see that and even imagine that. So it's no doubt that people think that the internet is something just floating up there that we can't.
It's also why people struggle to sort of understand the need for SEO, or why, well, you know, I've made a website, why is it not magically getting traffic? It's back to that thing of, it's hard for us as humans. We have, all of us have main character energy. We center ourselves in the center of our stories. And when somebody says to you, you're a tiny speck of dust floating in a dot in space, you can't picture that. You cannot take yourself out enough from that, you know, to realise how small you are and how insignificant you are. And it's the same with a website. 10,500 new websites are created every hour. Your website that you've lovingly created it, and you've put time and thought into it, and yes, you've launched it into the world. But that, you know, you're one amongst 10,500 other people. Yeah. You know, why is your website suddenly going to get traffic and get attention, and you're going to start making sales through it?
So
this is why you've got to work on it, and it's really hard for people to get their head around that. Okay, couple more facts and figures for you, and then I'm not just going to keep throwing facts and figures at you. But the IDC estimates that the global data sphere will grow to 175 zettabytes by 2025. So a zettabyte equals 1 trillion gigabytes. And again, you know, we are phenomenal figures, but if we think about the fact that I was doing a PowerPoint for a training course that we run, I think I did it 3 years ago, and the size of the data sphere then was 40 zettabytes, and they were saying it might get to 65 zettabytes by next year.
Oh gosh.
And that was in 2021 or 2. We're now at 2024, and they're saying by the end of next year it's going to be 175 zettabytes.
Wow.
So it is just growing so quickly because 10,500 new websites are created.
I'm not surprised.
That's why it's growing at that rate. And then, yes, since 2012, the internet has almost doubled in size every single year. And I think that is the definition of exponential. I'm not a mathematician, but I think exponential is where something is growing at a certain rate. Yeah. And I think doubling in size every year.
That's massive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's huge. It's absolutely huge.
Well, I like this stat man persona you've got going on.
Those are the end of my
You
stats.
blow my mind.
Yeah, and those are the end of my stats. Oh no, I've got one more stat for you. Internet of Things. Do you know what the Internet of Things is?
No, but you're going to tell me.
I am going to tell you. So the Internet of Things, the IoT, is essentially how many devices are connected to the internet. So nowadays, where we think, again, you used to access the internet through your laptop. Now we access it through our phones. We've also got Alexa devices. Those are all, you know, items that are connected to the internet. But also we've now got your fridge is connected to your internet. Your home heating system is connected. You know, your Ring doorbell is connected. We are making more and more of our lives connected to the internet, connected online, so that for us, it's easy. We go, oh, I'm going to be home now, I'm going to turn my heating on, I'm going to make sure my washing machine's on, and I'm going to put the cooker on so that my tea can start cooking. Or we were part of a court case once, and in the middle of the court case, in the middle of the court, family court, the judge stopped and went, oh, I'm sorry, I've just got to take this. And his Ring doorbell was ringing on his phone, and he literally, in the middle of the court, looked at his phone and went, I'm sorry, I'm not at home at the moment, I'm just doing a ruling, I'll contact you back.
What on earth?
I know, absolutely crackers. But again, you know, that's a whole other story, the psychology.
Yeah, I want to know that.
how we use these devices.
It's so Danny can unlock his car on his phone.
Yeah.
He can open his windows.
Yeah.
So we left his car somewhere the other week, and we went somewhere, and his phone alerted him that his windows were open.
Yeah.
And it was raining, so he put his windows up.
Yeah.
Like, how is that? I mean, he's got a cool car, but how is that even a thing that you can connect a car to?
I've got a new car coming in a few weeks, and it is not a cool car. It is
it's a mom car.
It's a mum. It is absolutely a mum-mobile. I think it's a T-Cross or something. But one of the features that it comes with as standard now is that your phone is your key. So you can have a car key, yes, but also your phone will unlock your car door when you get within a certain point.
I'm not sure how, it sounds all amazing and beneficial, but Like, you lose your phone, you lose everything.
Well, absolutely. This is what I mean. Everything is on there. Like I say, when I went travelling, my ID was on there, my tickets were on there, my travel passes were on there, all the information. It was during COVID times. Yeah. So all of my proof said that I'd had my jabs and everything was on there. Literally, you lose that and you are screwed. There's no backup. But can't get into your banking apps. Can't get your money, can't get anything.
Yeah.
But again, that's another story. So anyway, there will be, by the end of 2025, they are estimating that there will be 27.1 billion Internet of Things devices connected.
Wow.
Which again, numbers so big we can't put into context. But essentially our lives are going to be, and our homes certainly, will be routed through the internet so that everything will be connected and can talk to each other. And I mean, ethically,
I don't know how I feel about that.
I know, exactly.
I really don't know how I feel about that.
It always baffles me when you see these kind of dystopian films come out, like Terminator and all this. Like, the robots are going to take over. People now, some friends have said, the robots are going to take over in a few years. Now, the robots are here.
We're living in George Orwell's world.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the horse is bolted and the stable door is still wide open. Okay, so we have established that the internet is huge, and we have established that the internet does not live up in the sky. But where do you think the internet lives, Erin?
Well, I know that the internet is housed in servers, and I know that they are physical places. I don't know where in the world they are, though. But I know that they're in servers somewhere out there on the globe. There
are huge data centres all over the world, and about 60% of the world's data centres are owned by the large companies such as Google and Facebook, and they have huge data centres. They're usually in not very highly densely populated areas, such as, for example, the Amazon rainforest, where we are cutting down swathes of the rainforest to build data centres. Where we used to be putting cows on there that were bad for the greenhouse gases, we're now putting data centres on there, which are even worse.
Oh yeah, that's brilliant.
But also, loads of people have servers. So there are hundreds and millions of servers just in people's bedrooms that are part of that huge network. So that's part of it, the data centres. And again, when we talk about the environmental impacts of search, we'll look at data centres and how they run and things. I've got this here. 100 million servers estimated. 100 million servers located throughout the world, but it's a guess because nobody knows
where are
they. So the data centres are one part of the internet. The other bit is that we have what is called the backbone. The backbone is thousands of miles of long distance networks, which are mostly fibre optic cables that crisscross the globe. And these are a little bit like, at the beginning of the 20th century, I think the end of the 19th century, they started laying cables across the ocean and across the world in order to get the telecoms and the telephone system up and running. Internet works in exactly the same way. Huge fibre optic cables. And I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole with this one, so watching how they lay them on the deep sea and like the ships that they go out of. It's quite interesting. Again, go on YouTube and watch some videos because it's quite fascinating how they lay them. And how they have to make sure they're not going to be eaten by fishies and all this sort of stuff. Fishies. Them fishes, they love their cables. So there's the backbone, there's the data centres, and then the final bit is called the last mile. That's what it's known as in sort of cable parlance, but it could be more than a mile. And this is the bit that takes the internet into people's houses, and this goes from, there are different ways, obviously. We've got dial-up, we've got super fast broadband, we've got fibre optic cables, all the rest of it. And we've got different devices that access it, Alexa's mobile phone, blah, blah. So there are different ways of getting it in, and now there's 5G. But this is essentially the bit that takes it from the big cables, the data centres, and it comes through to a point switch box, and then it goes in cables into your house, so it goes through the air. And then again, I think the 5G, the 4G bit, this is why people think, it comes through the air. But same with mobile phone calls and microwaves, and there's all sorts of stuff going on in there you can't see. We're surrounded by it. But the reason that I tell you this is that there are a lot of moving parts here, And a lot of these systems are operated by completely different companies. So the company that owns the data center is not the same company that owns the cables that bring it to your house. So we've got companies like BT involved. We've already said we've got Google, Facebook owning the data centers. You know, we've got even some cables are shared by multiple companies. So quite often, I can't remember the name of the company that owns it, but they own the cables, and then either Virgin will bring it into your house, or EE will bring it into your house, or whatever. So there's all of these, you know, again, hundreds of thousands of different organisations that own all of these different bits. So it's not one big connected system.
No. This is what makes me laugh about people saying, oh, I don't want such and such company to have my data, or I don't want to give my details to them. I'm like, your details are out there, mate. Like, everyone has got your data, whether you like it or not. And you don't even have to give it them. Like, just to be around and have a phone and have a fridge.
So I mean, this is there's another rabbit hole here, and again, this is something we're going to come on to. But when people say, "Oh, my phone is listening to me," it's not listening to you. To some extent, it is, because it needs to understand when you're going to say, "Okay, Google," or "Hello, Siri," or whatever. I've probably just set all the phones off now, haven't I? But so it needs to listen to some extent, but also it doesn't need to listen to what you're saying, because it knows everything about you through big data.
Yeah.
It knows that you and I are sitting together in this room. It knows what I've searched for. It knows what you've searched for. It knows we're probably going to have a conversation about that. So, for example, if you start talking about wedding dresses, and then the next thing you know, you've got advertisements for wedding dresses.
Engagement rings.
Yeah.
Engagement rings.
I'm going to get loads of ads for those. I'm the wrong target audience. I'm not the one that needs to buy you one. But yeah, it's all working on big data. And again, people are. I was having a conversation last night about Tesco loyalty cards and Sainsbury's loyalty cards and stuff. If you've got something that is free, you are the product. So Facebook, all of the social media platforms, it's free. You are the product. Even, consumer loyalty cards, your Tesco Club card, you are the product. They are selling your data. That is where they are really making your money. You think you're saving money on your shopping. You're not. You are just data, big data, and that's all they're using for.
It's funny that people are still surprised, like I've just been on a trip to Canada. I get home and it's like, oh, look at this Canadian landscape that you could have gone to. And people are like, well, it knows where you've been.
Yes.
No shit, Sherlock. Yeah, it knows much more than where I've been.
Yeah.
It knows who I went with, it knows how I got there, it knows the conversations I was having.
And again, we think all of these apps that we use on a daily basis, we think they have been lovingly crafted to make our lives easier. We use maps. I use maps everywhere I go, because even if I'm going on a journey, I know I put my maps on, because I think it's going to tell me if there's been a crash or there's been traffic, and then I can go another way. Google has not created that app to make my life easier. Google has created that app so that it can track where I am and where I'm going at all times. How does Google know that on the road between here and Stackstead, which is 5 minutes down the road, that there's going to be traffic? It's because there are multiple people there recording the same bits of data, sending it back.
It's more so now. So I got in the car this morning and my CarPlay flashed up, and with the route to work.
Yeah.
And it's only because I get in the car at this time on a Thursday, so it knows where I'm going.
Yeah, mine
nobody is safe.
Mine knows that I go to Samsbury Hotel every Friday morning for a networking meeting, and as soon as I get in the car, it tells me, "Are you going to Samsbury Hall?"
Which is really helpful, because I think,
exactly. This is what I mean, and this is why we use all of this stuff, because it's helpful, because it makes our lives easier. But they haven't altruistically created it for us like that. They've created it so they can keep track of what we're doing, collect our data, and utilize that. So then this is the kind of the point, that there's all of these different organizations, there's all of these different ways, but the internet is not one thing owned by one person at any one point. And so, there are certain corporations that dominate. There's obviously Google and Facebook and X, Elon Musk with X. All of these companies are trying to become the dominant force on the internet. They're trying to become the gateway that we use to access the internet, which is why they're all readily agreeing to government regulation, because then they can go, well, look, we're towing the party line, so people are going to have to use Facebook to enter the internet, because we're the only ones that are regulated and applying,
And do you think that will work? Do you see in our future maybe it's not Elon Musk, maybe it's not Zuckerberg, but do you see one route into the internet in the future?
Potentially. So the internet was started with very libertarian, kind of utopian goals. Those government agencies and those academics that started the internet, their goal was to create something absolutely free, without rules and without, restrictions on people and stuff. But what happens with, and we, again, the philosophy and the sociology, and this is a whole different question, but if you do this, and people have done this throughout human history, time and time again, humans, if you let something be non-regulated, eventually it returns to the same state, which is this, there will be big corporations, monopolies that arise because there isn't sufficient competition to challenge them. So I think we have a long way to go yet before that journey is stopped, and I think the big three are Facebook, Google, and Elon Musk with his X, or whatever you want to call it. Those are the three players, the three that are closest at the moment. And I think they will get a lot closer before people realise and put some brakes on it and kind of try and return the internet to have some sort of democracy about it. But yeah, it's interesting because, again, we've talked about this in the past amongst ourselves. When we have a group chat, we will all share videos that we find funny, and we will quite often have said, somebody will share it, we'll go, yeah, I saw that the other day. We are seeing the same content, but we are accessing it through different channels. Our preferred ones, you and Chloe you like Instagram, Chloe likes Twitter, I like TikTok, Hannah quite often will share things off Facebook. We're sharing the same content, we're arriving at the same content, but we're accessing it through the channels that are most preferred by us.
Yeah.
And that is, that's, to some extent, that's our choice, but also there's been clever manipulation around that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they will become the way that we access the internet before they're not.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It is. We could probably do a whole episode on it.
We should.
Can we? There's so many episodes. Okay, so we've established that, the internet is not one thing in one place. It is not owned by one person. Originally it was, set out as this kind of goal, but it's devolved or become disorganized or whatever it might be. So really, there is nobody controlling the internet. There's nobody in charge of it. We have had attempts, as I've already said, the reason that Google and Facebook and X will comply with regulation attempts is because it works in their favour, it benefits them. But the EU, for example, has tried with GDPR and the right to be forgotten. It's put legislation in place to say we need some rules around this, guys.
Yeah,
it's become a lawless wasteland. So they have tried to do that. But again, you're talking about legal jurisdictions in countries. So the EU can put a law in place to say everybody has the right to be forgotten on the internet. But that means nothing in America, and that means nothing in Australia. And, so it's really hard to regulate or to put any kind of control or restriction on this.
Yeah. So in the grand scheme of things, it means nothing.
Yeah.
You hop across the Pacific and that rule's gone.
You don't even need to do that. You use a VPN, use a virtual network to access the internet, so that the search engines, the algorithms don't know where you are.
And everybody does that. If I want to watch a football game and I don't want to pay for it, I just say that I'm somewhere else. Everybody does that. I know, I'm probably going to get myself in trouble by saying that. Should have said that.
The internet police are coming.
Everyone does do that, don't they?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So it's not hard to
just
pretend that you're somewhere else, or whether that's to watch a football game or to avoid specific rules. It's you can't put restrictions on something that you've invented to be restrictless.
Yes. And this is one of the reasons that legislators are running into issues, is because they don't understand that. And legislators quite often think of the social media platforms as the internet. They don't understand that they are a tiny part of it and there's a whole other world. So, you see them pull Mark Zuckerberg in front of Congress, or you see the head of Twitter has to go and answer to, some government body or whatever, as though they are the internet. You can see that the American Congress people, they're like, let's get these gods of the internet in here to answer some questions. It's like, no, they just own an app. They're just the boss of a tiny bit.
Just a little CEO.
In the grand scheme of it, they're tiny. So even they don't understand what they're trying to legislate or what they're trying to put some rules and regulations on.
Yeah,
they've got no idea.
No.
No idea. So it's really, really hard. And the upshot of that, because there is no rules, there's no legislation, there's no regulations, it's very hard to put any kind of governance around it. That is the very thing that is allowing these monopolies to arise. So you have, Google, you have Facebook, you have Twitter, X, whatever Elon Musk's world is called, able to rise and take over and become these monopolies purely because of that.
And that competition is going to continue for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Like you said, they're just going to get closer to each other. It's got to come to a head at some point, I believe. But it's like as technology and as the internet advances, they're going to advance the way that they approach things. Mm-hmm. I just can't see it ending.
They are light years ahead. Mm-hmm. Again, if you think about the way that we understand this stuff. This is the job that we do. We are quite on top of when things change and all that. But even that, we're behind the curve. We're responding to what they do.
Yeah.
They are proactively, think about AI. They've been, now we're using ChatGPT and things in our daily lives. ChatGPT was 5-10 years ago for them. They're 5-10 years ahead.
And we have to find out. They have to invent something for us to find it out.
Yeah, exactly. They're working on worlds that we don't understand. We are, final question. This is the whole point of this episode of the podcast. Erin, do you think you can turn the internet off?
I don't think you can now.
No.
I would like to sometimes.
Yes.
I would really like to. But no, my answer is no.
You can turn the internet off on your phone.
Yeah.
But you couldn't, there would be no way of turning the internet off. There have been a couple of occasions around the world where this was tried. So in Egypt in 2011, we had the Arab Spring, which everyone seems to have forgotten about now. 88% of the internet across Egypt was shut down. And that was feasible because the government owned the main service provider. Right. So it was a nationalised service, which is called Telecom Egypt. So they shut down the main service provider. That allowed, as I say, 88% of the internet shut down, which still was 12% running, which was enough to allow the news to be broadcast and allow messages to get in and all that kind of stuff.
And again, that's only Egypt.
That's only in that one country,
right.
It was only in that one country, and it was also only for a short period of time. I think it was for less than a day in total.
Did everyone just go into carnage, I imagine?
Well, I mean, they were having a revolution, so it was quite carnage. But, people have, as we've already said, there are servers everywhere, there are VPNs, there are ways of getting people just mobilised and switched it back on, essentially. Yeah. So they couldn't do it for very long. There was also in Syria in 2013 that had a countrywide internet blackout for 20 hours. That was because a internet cable leading into the country, one of those big cables that I mentioned, was severed. They believe it was done by the government purposefully, again, to put a blackout on Syria because it was obviously part of the war. But again, it lasted 20 hours and then it was back up and running in various ways. And now we've got, I've already mentioned Elon Musk with his Skynet or whatever, I can never remember what his network is called. But the satellites are bringing the internet now. Yeah. So even if you cut those cables, we've got the satellites that are doing it. We've got backup methods now of getting the internet. So again, you can try, but
it's screwed.
Yeah. And final one, in 2004, the Moldavian president managed to cut the entire country's internet access after there were protests against his regime. But at the time, the country only had a really rudimentary network with a handful of computers, and so it really wasn't difficult. He literally just went around and turned some machines off, and somebody else went around afterwards and turned them back on again. So it was fine. So again, a tiny number of computers, it was sort of feasible. It was on the same level as us turning it off in our house.
And these are so interesting because, this was probably massive for them at the time. And my answer, no, you can't turn the internet off, has just been proven by this. Because, we can't get our whole country to decide on one prime minister. You're telling me that you're going to get the whole globe to turn all the servers off at once? Never going to happen. Yeah. Never, ever going to happen. They can't even manage to do it for more than 20 hours in one country. So imagine the whole globe trying to combat it.
There is still a real sort of core of that libertarian, a group of people at the heart. You know, the hackers, if we think about Anonymous, for example, there's some really interesting documentaries on Netflix at the minute about Anonymous and their work. But, you know, they have those core principles of freedom of speech, of freedom of information. You know, they are against these big corporations, which is why they do the hacking jobs that they do. You know, these are really, really internet savvy, intelligent people, super clever people, and have lived their entire lives online. And, you know, even if a government comes in and shuts down a server or a bit of the internet, hackers will go back in and will put it back up again because they believe in it. So, you know, again, yeah, you can't get the whole world to agree on it, but there's a, you know, there's a philosophical argument at the heart of it that it should be there and it should be good. And this is why when you say, do you think we'll ever reach a point where either one or two corporations gatekeep the internet? I think, yes, we might get a long way there, but I think ultimately people will fight back and will try and reclaim it because it is supposed to be free for everybody, and it is supposed to be a place where everybody can participate and exist. And it isn't, obviously there are barriers to that because humanity, but there are people that believe in that core and will fight for it.
It's also too far gone, you know, like you said, there's always someone, whether it's a hacker or like whether it's the satellites, like, yeah, in this crazy world, maybe everyone could turn the internet off on the globe. But we're too late because they're now in space. You know, it's like it's never ever going to happen now.
Yeah, exactly. There's too many backup plans. There's too many access.
Too many clever people.
Yeah, there are. Okay, so that's it. That's the end of it. So what have we learned and what are we taking away, Erin?
I've learned that the internet is fucking massive.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit scared of it actually. And I'm going to take away from this that I'm just a speck of dust and I'm so irrelevant. So thanks a lot.
There you go. That's the purpose of the podcast, to destroy your self-confidence.
I'm really surprised at some of those statistics, and I think it's really difficult to wrap your head around the size of this, especially when we're hitting home the message that it's physical, it's on Earth, it's with us. It's not this. The internet isn't this dreamland above us. So to match those figures with something that you can put your finger on is a bit scary. You can't get your head around.
It does sound contradictory as well. I think when people think, you know, can you turn the internet off? No, because it's a magic thing upstairs. You know, it's in between earth and heaven. So, well, actually, no, it's physical. It's here on Earth. Oh, and yeah, of course we can turn it off. Well, no, actually, it's too big.
Too far gone.
The cat is out the bag. You know, it's there. There's too many moving parts. There's too many people. There's too many servers. All that stuff.
Which will only increase.
Which is only going to increase. Absolutely, yeah. It's got a long way. Like, there's a lot of growth in it before we reach the point where we have to start putting some brakes on it.
Yeah.
People are starting to realise it, like I say. The search engines in particular are starting to realise that we just cannot keep indexing all of this data all the time. It's too big, it's too massive, and as we've said, 80% of it is dead. People don't need it, so there's only 20% of it that we really need to bother about.
It's filtering through that though, isn't it? You know, that filing cabinet that we always talk about is massive, and half of it's dead, like half, but we have to you got to filter through that. How do you do that when it's X amount of zettabytes? You know, it's too big for any human to even imagine managing. Crazy. That's what I learned.
It is crazy. And maybe we will do an episode on how does a search engine actually work as well and dig into that and see what it's actually doing. But essentially, it's massive. Yeah. There we go.
Well, thank you for teaching me.
You're very welcome.
It's been a joy.
You're very welcome. So on our next episode, it's going to be the tables are turned. You're going to teach me something, aren't you?
I'm going to try. I'm going to try.
I think you will.
Okay.
Right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for listening, and thank you for watching, and thank you, Erin, for participating.
Thank you.
We'll be back next time.
We will be back next time.